Ooh.
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are going to give it just a few minutes for people to get logged on here. In the meantime, we have a fun icebreaker question that we just sorted out right before we popped on.
That was well
Let
planned out.
us
What are you talking
know,
about?
it was very well played. We were talking about travel and different places we've all been over the years. So let us know in the chat, what is the favorite place that you've ever traveled to, where you would recommend anyone on this webinar, any one of these hosts should travel to, and why? Hawaii. We were talking about
Oh, Alicia,
Hawaii
good
before
choice.
we
Yeah.
hopped on in here.
I went to Kauai when I went to Hawaii, the Garden Island, which was beautiful. Much
Mhm.
less
There you go.
population, very
So
tiny,
did
but
so did
gorgeous.
Colin.
Oh,
There
there
you
you
go.
go. Hey, Colin knows.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
good to know.
Iceland, Mykonos, perfect.
Oh, Jenny, another Helsinki.
Oh, there
Awesome.
you go.
Mhm.
I lived there for 6 months. We were just talking about it.
All right, Judy, I'm
Plus,
taking Sevilla. That's a good one.
plus one to Sevilla. That's an amazing place. Good.
All right.
This is going to be a long list for me. I'm going to make all these
Yes.
places I need to go. Belize is beautiful. I have been there.
We are recording the chat, I assume, so we can go back and review this later for
Yes,
but
yes,
destinations.
yeah.
Okay.
I could attach that to the follow-up email if
Perfect.
everyone
Perfect.
wants to.
all right, so we got a new title here, right? We're calling this a couple of different things here. All right, let's keep it coming with the travels, right? And we'll go back and maybe we'll present the results on this next time, right? And say
Oh yeah, we
what are the
can
top
do
places.
we could do a fun graphic for that. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I'm Katrina McAfee. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing at Association Analytics, and this is our Analytics in Action series. This year, for the first 6 months, we're doing something a little different. We have a theme. It's navigating the member
Chicago.
journey using data. And the first session is today. So that would be using your data, create a new member strategy. Very excited to have a special star guest that will introduce herself in a minute. We have Bill Conforti, our SVP of Strategy and Solutions for Association Analytics, here as a host. And then we also have Merritt. Oh my God, Merritt, I just asked you. Pronounce your last name.
Rolfing.
Rolfing. How quickly I forgot.
That's
Senior Solutions Advisor for Association Analytics. So these two guys chat with associations all the time about their pain points and struggles with data and turning that into actionable insights. So that's why you're in great hands with the host here. And then we have Brianne Wheeler. She is a fractional CMO for Levitate Marketing. I'm going to let her do a quick intro of herself, and then we'll turn it over to Bill to get started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the A2 team for allowing me to pop in on this webinar with you today. I most recently, if you're like confused, some of you might know me. Most recently, for the last 3 years, I was leading the marketing team at PropFuel, and I just started my own fractional CMO business, Levitate Marketing. So I'm super happy to be here today and talk with the team about member acquisition.
All right, cool. Thank you, Bree, and thank you, Merritt. So some of you guys might remember or know the Bill and Greg show, as we used to call it. The Bill and Merritt show doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but we're going to go forward. So Merritt's job is
We'll
to
do our best.
make these webinars 30% more fun. I think it's 30%.
Uh-oh.
So we'll see how he does at that.
We'll build to that. We'll build to that. Okay. We'll start at 15 right now. We'll get there.
All right. All right, cool. Yeah, so people are still naming cities, so keep that going. I know it's very common to just write where you're calling in from sometimes, so no disrespect to Chicago or St. Louis, but I have to admit I was a little curious as to whether you're just saying where you're calling from or whether that was your number one travel destination. So if you could clarify that, that would be awesome. All right. Here we go. So what are we going to do, right? Introductions, poll questions, so you can get your phones out for that. As usual, we're breaking down the topic into some sort of framework or something that we can put into 3 buckets or 3 sections on a slide. And in this case, it's all about new member acquisition. So we're going to tell you how to build the top of your funnel, how to engage and nurture the members that make it into that funnel. And it's all about conversions, right? We want to end up with new members. We're going to have pro tips with Bree, which is going to be you know, it'll be a section at the end, but really we're going to kind of do that throughout. We'll make it conversational, and that includes everyone that is in the chat. The chat is going nuts, which is awesome. So keep that up, even when we're off of travel destinations and on to strategies for acquisition. All right. So as Katrina mentioned, this is part one. It's going to be a 6-part series. And we kind of went back to basics, right? We've covered a lot of topics over the last couple of years, but we really wanted to break it down in some really concrete and useful user stories that pretty much every association has to deal with. So we're going to tackle those in the first 6 webinars of this year's AIA series. And also, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, Katrina, but I believe all of these are eligible for CAE credit. So we have a lot of people. This was one of our most popular webinars ever, which I attribute to the awesome topic, maybe a little bit, and then all the CAE credits that people are looking for early on in the year. And also, I really thank you guys for showing up. I realized I just was on the ASAE AI Summit and doing a product demo over there just a little while ago. So we're competing directly with that. So thank you guys for showing up, and we'll try to make it worthwhile. All right. So Merritt, give the audience a quick summary of Association Analytics.
I mean, you can probably guess from the name, for those who haven't heard of us before. Don't know how you ended up here if you hadn't, but yeah, we help associations use their data more effectively. All we do is help associations to get all of their disparate data sources, you know, your AMS, your marketing data, as we'll talk about today, any other touch points you have, into one place to just better understand your members, right? We have all these out-of-the-box integrations with the tools you guys are using, and we developed a wonderful platform called Acumen AI, providing to the association world to help them, like I said, know their members, know what makes them tick, and know how to deliver just the ideal member experience to them. I've been doing this for a long, long time. Got people like Bill on the team here, absolutely brilliant human beings who both as people and as technology people who understand associations, who understand the technology. And yeah, we, every day, we are excited to bring the value of analytics to everyone on this call and everyone in the association world.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Merritt. Yeah, so Merritt has been doing this a long time, even though Katrina, who's also been doing this for a very long time at A2, didn't know how to pronounce his name, so we'll give her a hard time about that later. All right,
we're on a first name basis, so there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Right, it's poll time, right? So let's get out our phones. Like, you know, we usually like people to pay attention and not use their phones during these things, but we'll make an exception for the next couple of slides. Start off with the softball, right? How had your association's membership been trending year over year prior to COVID, right? So think back to, you know, 2020, 2019. We want to eliminate, right? The pandemic was kind of a big disruptor, right, to put it mildly. And I just want to see, COVID aside, how has your membership been trending? Okay. And we'll get. This is a platform we're using right now. It's called Slido. As you can see, if you haven't used it before, I recommend it. It's kind of makes these things sort of fun and interactive, and you can either turn on or off this feature, which shows how people are voting. Right. I mean, I'm kind of torn. I think it's cool, but at the same time, I do think it influences for some of the questions, like how people vote when they see the responses start to come in. So it looks like we've got about not quite a third to half of the people have voted so far. So we're going to do better next time. I want a higher participation number next, but so you can see what's happening here, right? So about half of us say that our membership had been growing. Another 40% say it was about the same, and 13% were in decline. So without being too scientific about it, I would say that those numbers are amazing and unfortunately not representative of you know, the state of the association market more broadly as of that time. But nevertheless, congratulations to all of you. It sounds like you're already doing pretty well, but we're going to tell you how to do even better. All right. So let's go then to our next question. Which best describes your association's approach to new member acquisition?
Well, this would be interesting for people like Joanne, who their members are schools, so they don't change very much. But
right.
Yeah. I'm curious.
So some of us work for associations. We've got a captive market, right? We're that state bar association where it's mandatory, like you can't practice unless you join, right? Or some of it's not quite mandatory, but it's just really expected, right? So you have that captive market. There's broadly speaking, right? You can market with a magnet, which is like it's kind of a passive approach. It's content marketing. It's like people, they find your website through searches or whatever, and then you track some that way. It can be more like what I sometimes call the megaphone approach, which are really proactive. You're reaching out and you're kind of actively soliciting members, right? And developing new audiences and all of that. If anyone said none, we don't talk about it much. I would love to hear from you in the chat why that is. Like the captive market approach is maybe like I could see those maybe interchangeable. It's like, okay, we have the market, so we don't talk about it that much. But if you're not in a captive market and you still are not talking about new member acquisition, would love to hear about that. Anybody surprised about the numbers that are coming in? Don't feel obligated. Yes,
I think it seems pretty what I expected, right? I don't know. I mean, Bree, what do you think? I mean, this is your bailiwick. I'm curious, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see the megaphone approach. I think that's really common because especially when you're connecting with large groups of people, it feels like the most efficient way to get communications out. Captive market, they need something that makes sense. And then magnet, I'm really happy to see that half are approaching through, some kind of value-based content. And I'm really happy to see that. Interestingly, it's about the same amount, number of people, 50-ish%, as the number that said that they're growing. So I wonder if there's any correlation there.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks for those comments. Have a few people in the chat. So we have niche membership. That makes sense. Older members are because it's expected, but we need to go after the younger ones, right? So generational stuff, that's a big problem, right, across the space. And there's lots of content out there about how you can kind of address that. Just for clarity's sake, my original iteration of these choices was something like proactive versus reactive. And, those didn't quite work for me, but like the megaphone approach, it's not only megaphone, it's what I meant, right? Really, it was like you do some magnet stuff, right? Everybody's going to be doing some content marketing and SEO and things like that, but then you augment that with some of those more proactive megaphone approaches. So anyway, that's kind of what I meant by that. And then let's go to our last poll question, and I want to call your attention to the wording on this one. Who is accountable for new member acquisition in your association? All right, so Bree, I'll put you on the spot. What, in your view, is the difference between being accountable and being responsible?
Yeah, so I think it depends broadly on the setup of your organization's team. Some membership organizations have actual sales teams dedicated to attracting and retaining members over time. And I would say in that case, the accountability for numbers, at least, and growth lies largely on them. But then, there's also responsibility to the rest of the team and how you're engaging throughout the year. Marketing and communications, certainly, and how members are being engaged by client services member services over the year. It makes a huge difference. And you can have one touch point that might make the difference for a member. So, but it's specifically when it comes to new member acquisition, getting more people interested is largely a big sales job.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. Everything is 100% true. I want to give a little bit of a different spin on it. I would say a lot of people said everyone, right? And we talk about governance, we talk about data. It's like it's everyone's responsibility, and that 100% agree with, right? New member acquisition and as well as retention and member experience and all of those things, to a large degree, are everyone's responsibility. But accountability, I think, is not the case, right? you know, a smaller number, a department, or even maybe an individual or a few individuals are accountable for that. Because for me, the main difference is there's a specific goal in mind and there's progress and performance tracking against that goal. So if I say, look, all of us are responsible for making sure our customers are happy, right? That's true of most organizations, no matter what kind of products or services you provide. But if I say, Merritt, you're accountable, right, for a certain dollar amount of sales, right, or a certain numerical measure of customer satisfaction, and I'm going to track your progress towards that, then that's kind of a different thing, right? And
Right, yeah.
if you stand to be rewarded for achieving that, or punished, and or there's some consequences if you don't, then that's kind of a different thing. So so my point is that if we I think most people, and tell me if this doesn't apply to you, right? But I think most of us would probably change our vote, right? And we'd have a lot more nones if they use this, if they really looked at a distinction between who's accountable and who is responsible. So you can start to see where we're going with this. We might need to rethink, our approach a little bit, and we'll talk about how to do that. We should probably be a little bit more deliberate, right? And it's like, we can't just say, hey, look, we want to acquire new members, yes, right, of course, but how many new members and what's our plan to do that, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about all those things. But one of the reasons we don't do that is because it's hard, right? And we're not the only ones that are struggling with it. So tell us about that, Merritt.
Yeah, no, and like you said, I mean, it shows right here. That's a report from Wild Apricot. 68% of organizations have difficulty growing membership. It is, I think both you and Bree were mentioning it. It is at the end of the day kind of the responsibility, whether tertiarily or directly, of everyone in the organization. It's a membership organization, so efforts lead to membership growth or retention, and everyone on this call works very hard, and it's very difficult to use the limited resources we all have to achieve these goals we may or may not have set before us. And so whether it is you have a specific place you're reaching for, or whether it is you're just doing the work you do every day, that effort is difficult, and it's just hard getting new people in the door and keeping them there once you do, right? And then this second report here is from Marketing General. Big report comes out every single year, big survey, just showing that in 2020 specifically, and there's a reason we picked that year, 42% of associations saw growth. I think that from our previous slide, the poll we had, I think these webinars self-select for people who are a bit more forward thinking. So maybe we just have better people who are better at it. I don't know. But that is a big number. And if you look further back to those previous years of those MGI reports, like in 2019, it was 45% of associations saw growth, 48% in 2018. So it was trending in the wrong direction anyway. And when it was going up, it was single digits, right? So it's hard to do, and unfortunately, it's not going in the right direction, both as far as a trend across the association world. And so that for that reason alone, I would say, right, we can't just blame just the pandemic on these sort of things. It's a lot of reports are coming out saying that there has been growth in associations from 2020 to 2023 because I think of a bounce back. But again, it's not just that. There's been issues with members, according again to those MGI benchmarking surveys, seeing ROI, seeing lack of value as reasons they're not renewing. Members are spending, sometimes a decent chunk of change on membership, and they want to see something for that. And maybe they're not seeing it. Maybe they don't know about it. Maybe any number of reasons. But beyond that, it's also connecting with those younger people. I myself am dead in the middle of the millennial generation, right? And so people like myself and younger, we're more and more a big chunk of the workforce. These are numbers that we got from, I believe it was from Johns Hopkins. 2019, 55% of the workforce 41% of the workforce were either Gen Z or millennials. We're up to 55% now. And only 31% of these two generations, those two cohorts, are parts of associations, coming up only 5% from 4 or 5 years ago. And that's big, right? That's going to keep on happening. There's so many other resources out there. I mean, I could go on TikTok, I guess, but I could go on YouTube, or I could go on to even things like other resources like LinkedIn. I can go and talk to my college. I can go and talk to other mentorship opportunities. There's so many things out there that are screaming for my attention, screaming for all these younger people's attentions that they've reached to as everything becomes more and more digital, that associations are going to struggle with standing out, standing above the crowd, even though by all rights you think they'd be set up for it because they're the ones with all the knowledge. And then obviously the broader industry declines. I thought this number was insane, but it is true. Like every day from now until 2030, 10,000 baby boomers are going to retire. Like that's a lot of people every single day. What's that?
Is that a US only stat, Anthony?
That is a US only stat. Yes. Yeah. Because I mean, the baby boomers are technically only in the United States, technically. But yeah, that is a US only stat. And that's crazy, right? And then dovetailing with that is the use of subscriptions. Like a membership is a subscription, but so are so many other things. Everyone here, I'm sure, has a single video, some sort of streaming subscription. I counted the other day. I think I have 7. Oddly enough, I like to watch international soccer, so I have to have Peacock, and I have to have Paramount Plus, and I have to have Hulu, and I have to have all the other things too, just to watch a single team's game across all these different leagues they're in. Things like Spotify. But all to say, like subscriptions are big business. It's a thing people are used to paying for. Even food kit subscriptions, right? They are up from $5 billion a year in 2018, talking about things like Blue Apron, things of that nature, up to $13 billion a year as a total revenue in 2023, projected for almost 20 billion in a few more years. I mean, people are used to doing this. It's just understanding how to get in front of them, how to understand that this is a subscription that continues to feed them the value they're looking for. So looking at those two things, right? Membership is hard to keep on growing, and the fact that people want to, or are used to at least, paying for all these subscriptions, what do we do next, right? And so having said all that, I think it's where we hop into why we're all here, and that's where I knock it back over to old Bill.
All right, cool. The 3 easy steps. So there's a bunch of cool stuff going on in the chat. There's questions about like the nuances of all that data that you just presented. That's actually a pretty good idea. Like we're gonna consider this for analytics in action going forward, because there's always a lot of talk about, our staff is not good at interpreting data and kind of getting real insights. But you guys are good at this. I can tell by the questions you're asking.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe we take some publicly available data and kind of, chop it up like this and see if we agree on some of the conclusions that you can.
Joanne, come back next time. I'll do a little more digging into that. I did a cursory read into a Johns Hopkins report, so I'll do some more digging. And it was a big generation, and those numbers are going to be high anyway. But
yeah,
millennials are an even bigger generation than the baby boomers as well. And Aaron, you're right. Gen Xers do not like to join things. My brother was not a big joiner.
All right. Okay, so this is what you've been waiting for, right? The 3 easy steps. Not surprisingly, we're going to tell you how to build the top of the funnel. We're going to engage and nurture those prospects that make it into the funnel. Ultimately, we're going to try to convert as many of them as we can. And this process looks pretty familiar to someone that is in Merritt's line of work, right? What does this look like to you?
I mean, that is a sales process, right? That is literally what I'm doing there are several people on this call that I'm sure I probably called at least once or twice. This is what I'm doing every single day, right? It's identifying a good audience. It's figuring out what will resonate with them, and it's asking them to do something for you. It is a sales process. So yeah.
All right. So really quick story. We're a lot of good stuff in the chat, so we're going a little bit slow, so we're going to speed it up a bit. But I had this boss, like, a long time, 100 years ago when I first started, and he would always talk about the difference between fishing like with a cane pole, right? Just relaxing, just like throwing something in the water and hoping that you get a bite, versus I think fishing with a spear was how he, termed it, right? It was maybe like fishing with a net is maybe more appropriate. But the point is that are you being deliberate about the types of prospects that you're trying to convert and the frequency that you're trying to do it? And I think Bree can shed some light on this later on, but you should be deliberate about all of this stuff, right? Have a plan related to all the different processes, just as you would if you were trying to sell a product, right? Which essentially is what we're all doing, right? Okay, right. So first step, build the top of the funnel. What do we mean by that, right? So think about like every discussion of any kind of sales is always a funnel, right? The conversions are at the bottom, and we're talking in this case, right? Conversions are at the bottom. In order to convert them, you have to nurture, you have to engage those prospects. And first, we're basically talking about the top of the funnel, which is awareness and consideration, right? So this is where you have your social media, you have maybe newsletters or blogs or all sorts of things that are just kind of put out there in order to establish, credibility, and things like that to draw people in. Okay. So here's an idea. The idea of new audiences, right? And so we know a lot about our members. We focus on members' satisfaction, member experience, member retention, but what about the other constituent groups, right? We have partners, we have contributors, affiliates, attendees, authors, right? All different ways that individuals or organizations engage with us. And some of them are very good prospects for members, right? So this graphic, as you probably can tell, is really old. We had a member, one of the early adopters, of our products and services. They had about 30,000 members, and they using their data, they had this initiative where they wanted to get a better look at their constituency, right? Their broader constituency, and they found that it was over 300,000, right? So it's 10x, right? The number of members. And this was a game changer for them, right? It was a lot of non-dues revenue opportunities, but also it was a great source for new members, right? If they approached that deliberately, you could very easily see that there were some opportunities to convert some of them. And the opportunities are not all the same because they're engaged in different ways, right? Probably someone is thinking this, so I just want to point out, that underlying all of this, I want to acknowledge that not every constituent should necessarily become a member, right? One of the reasons that, broadly speaking, membership is not as robust, like membership growth is not as robust as it might be, is some associations are intentionally not putting as much effort into those kinds of conversions because there's lots of ways that you can engage that don't require you to be a member. And sometimes that results in more non-dues revenue, or maybe your association is focused on, trade shows rather than membership. There are lots of reasons why not all of these constituent groups are real prospects to convert to membership. But my point really is to be deliberate about that, right? If that happens to fit with your model, then that's great, but don't just leave it, leave that sort of thing to chance, right? Now, the other thing that we can do is we can expand our pool. So how do we do that, Merritt?
So that's about understanding. I mean, what is the potential out there, right? Like a great example, there's an association we work with, a medical association certifying body, right? And you had to be certified to be a member. But there's all these other people, all these other, companies or what have you that they touch, right? Whether it's tertiarily, whether it's secondarily, whether it's vendors or, like you said, business partners or non-certified people who might want to access some of the vast amount of value and content and services that association or any association I'm talking to here on this call today might be offering. It's about understanding what is that potential other group, right? What can we deliver that maybe not be all the benefits of the traditional membership, but creating another type of membership could create a whole new audience. And, again, if you could just maybe not double, but add an extra 50% to the potential member base, like you're going to fall into membership, quite honestly. So it's a way to see and understand looking forward, what more do people want out of you and what could you deliver to those who just maybe you've talked to once or twice, but could be coming back time and time again, right? That subscription model, once again.
Cool. Thanks, Merritt.
That's right, Tanya.
Yeah, Tanya's doing it. Anybody else that has some experience with this would love to hear about it. Bree, you have a comment?
I do. Yeah, I have experience with this. Before my software work, I was on the association side for almost a decade, and I worked for larger healthcare organizations. And Bill, what you described with, you only know a fraction of, only a fraction are members, and then what else? What is the rest of everyone doing there? And why are they there, and who are they? And most likely you don't know. And so finding out more about who they are and what they need, they're there for a reason. They're on your email list. If they or whatever it is, they're coming to your event, they're there for a reason. And so finding out what they value and what they need and being able to deliver that is key. And Merritt, I also love what you said about redefining membership. I think the way that membership, quote, traditional membership is defined is pretty narrow. and, you know, could be outdated in some ways. And so, you know, maybe there is a partner membership, maybe, and I know we've, you know, likely you've explored some of these, but really finding out like who's there now, who's paying attention now, who are they and what they need will open up so many opportunities. And, you know, that example of my larger healthcare organization, there were about 10,000 members and they were in decline a little bit at the time. And we had a 30,000 person email list. So
Oh, wow.
2/3, what were they doing there? And I didn't find out, and I wish I had, because we would have been better off. So that's my mistake, but I you know, don't make the same mistake a decade later.
All right. So Sarah's asking how to get partners to share their data. We could literally do a whole hour webinar just on that topic. My general answer to that when it comes up is carrot works better than stick, right? And you may not even have any leverage over partners anyway, but show them, right? Share a dashboard with them that shows them what they can get back from you if they share their data, right? So they would do it for benchmarking purposes, or maybe they would do it to be included in your directory so they can sell stuff to your other partners, right? There are lots of reasons why providing that to you might be helpful to them. If you can communicate that value to them, then they'll buy it, right? So that's a broader theme that we'll touch on a little bit later. Okay, so a couple of things we want to cover here is methods and metrics. So we'll get into this for each one of these things, but at the top of the funnel, there's awareness and there's visibility. So right, we have social media is popular, events, career fairs, SEO, right? You want to attract people to your website. So all of those are methods of kind of like getting your name out there, building brand awareness and visibility. And what else, right? What are we missing there? Let us know in the chat. And
I'm really curious to see that. Yeah, like what are people doing to let people know that they exist? It's the hardest part.
I bet you have some that we missed, Bree. What else should be on the list?
Anything that delivers immediate value. So if there's something, if it's a particular profession and there's something trending, any piece of valuable content that can cut down on time involved with the individual accessing the information, understanding the issue, whatever it is. I'm thinking more along healthcare lines this morning, but this happens in every industry. There's something that you can provide that probably isn't going to cost any money, or maybe a little bit of money, that you can provide to them to get them interested.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, on the metric side, this is not an exhaustive list at all, but you definitely have or have access to data on social media engagement, right? So it's not just like, hey, we put a bunch of stuff out there. Do people view it, which is important too, but do they engage with, right? Do they like it? Do they retweet it, whatever? This is one case where impressions or reach is really valuable, because it's really just about awareness and visibility. And, you know, if I don't become aware, obviously, then you're not going to be able to engage me or convert me to a member. Registrations, if you have maybe like a free event or seminars or things like that. And then all the things that you find out from website visitors, right? Sessions, unique visitors, all these kinds of things. Really good for visibility, right? What about thought leadership, right? We play this game sometimes called how do you measure that, right? It's like, you know, not every, but most associations have some strategic objective that relates to thought leadership. It's like, hey, we want to be the go-to resource for people in our profession. It's like, okay, well, how do we know if we did better at that or not, right? And it's things like, do people read your blog? Do they subscribe to it? Do they sign up for it? You have these white papers, you know, do people read those, or publications, webinars, podcasts, et cetera, all these things where you're putting your unique value, right? Your association specific content out there are ways to build thought leadership, right? And you can measure all that, and you know, some of the same ways, but instead of here, I care about things like page conversions, right? So you made it to the blog, but did you read it, right? Did you spend enough time on that page, or did you scroll far enough down the page, right? Did you click the button there? Did you come back, you know, right? Or did you come to the website once and never come again, or did you have a lot of return visitors? All of those things speak to thought leadership, right? So it's kind of like bringing people in, establishing your reputation as a provider of valuable content, so forth. And that gets you to the point where people are willing to engage, because most of the top of the funnel stuff is anonymous, right? So the next step is, hey, I'm not just going to like go and read something on your site, but I'm going to sign up for your blog, or I'm going to download that piece of content. And in doing so, I'm going to provide you my email address. And now you know who I am. And now you can start to nurture that relationship, and you can start to engage, right? You can start to engage with me, right? So we talk about top of the funnel. You're aware, you're considering, right? Well, you might want to learn more. At the bottom, we know that we want to convert you. And then in the middle is probably where you spend the most time, is on this engagement and nurture, right? Okay, so what does that look like? Sometimes it looks something like this, right? So you want to kind of map it out. You want to think about what are the different stages that the prospects would go through. What are the different touch points that they might encounter along the way? How do you prompt and kind of urge them to keep going through the process, right? So I don't know. This one is just, I just picked this image out because when I think of customer journey map, I always think of, something that looks like this. And this one is, this is probably the old way of doing it. But Bree, this is the sort of thing that that a CMO would work on, for an association. What advice do you have, for anybody that's looking to kind of map something like this out, or put some more concrete plans around how they want to acquire members?
Yeah, so it's not linear. The journey is, and I think this graphic indicates that really well. But it's really, and Tim in the chat mentioned about having a great PR team who gets their organization in the news regularly, and it's really that combination of experimentation. Like, you're not going to know if somebody read your press release necessarily. You'll get general impressions, but you're not going to know exactly who read it, most likely. But over time, the more exposure that someone has to your organization, whether it's paid, organic, word of mouth, whatever it is, that's what's going to get you the results in the long term. Particularly the word of mouth is awesome. And so, yeah, I think the other thing that's key here is, it's great to measure impressions. It's great to have all the metrics, but they really need to be tied into the larger picture of what you're trying to do. So it can't just be like, okay, we've got 1,000 impressions on this. Great. It has to be tied to, okay, like, what's the next thing? So when you're looking at the customer journey, okay, how many people converted at this stage? And this is where we're in like more of like a for-profit, like funnel mindset, right? Where you're thinking, okay, how do we get these people to the next stage? And that has to be thought out beforehand. So you can't go into the annual conference and then like a week later be like, okay, now what should we do? How should we follow up with all the people who are at this event? How should we get them to become members? The real needle gets moved when you're thinking about those things beforehand. You're able to measure them and see what worked and what didn't work, so that you can stop doing the things that don't work. And I think that's the spirit of experimentation. Not everything is going to work. And so really just being connected to that spirit of, and it almost takes like a little cultural shift to be like, okay, we're going to try this. And now that didn't work. And so it's not like, okay, that didn't work, so let's just do nothing. It's like, what are we going to do next? What are we going to try next? Whether it's an offer, whether it's an actual sales offer for membership, whether it's a new educational offering. There's so much creativity to be had in trying new things and seeing what works. And if you're paying attention to the responses, you'll get your direction from there.
It reminded me of the term fail successfully there, Bree, right? Trying things, if they don't work, well, then there's a reason why it didn't work. So what did we learn from that, I think? And so that kind of came to mind as you were saying all that. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about content strategy as you were doing that, right? Because each one of those touch points is in many cases, right, it's a piece of content, right? It's like some piece of collateral or some kind of call to action that you want to involve the prospects in. And so that's an additional thing to consider when you're classifying your content or when you're creating new content. Is kind of where what kind of outcomes you expect to promote, like based on that. Okay.
Yeah. Just one more
so-
thing on that, Bill. Sorry,
sure.
I was gonna add before I forget. The content creation, it doesn't have to come out of thin air. So
Yeah.
once you do something and you see how people react to it and you get some feedback on it, they might tell you something like, 7 people might say the same thing to you, and that's where you head next with your content, right? So it's like all informed based on what you're hearing, what you're experiencing, not just like the actual metrics, but the more qualitative feedback that you're getting is also really, really important and will guide you to down the right path to delivering the value that the individual is seeking.
Yeah, great. Great comment. Thank you. So Brian is talking about referrals in the chat. That's a great one. The doing research for this, that's pretty common, like one of the main methods, right, for getting new members. It almost kind of leaps over a lot of the top of the funnel and gets you right into the engage and nurture portion. So yeah, that's definitely a really good method to try out. I will say that you have to be really good with value clarity with your current members before you ask them to refer their friends and colleagues, right? So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, so here's some examples of the customer journey. So if you were, some of you might have been on our AIA webinar back in, I don't know, June or July, or sometime in the summer, and we talked about the love language, right, related to new member acquisition. And we invited our friend Chris Galodi on, and he talked about this sort of framework for, stepwise for bringing new people on, right? You engage them with some kind of anonymous content, you get them to register or like kind of identify themselves as part of one of your communities, you get them to buy something, the commerce, and then ultimately you get them to convert to members. So ours is pretty similar. Maybe it's a bit more, maybe add another step or so, right? So after awareness, the content part, in addition to being anonymous, it's very often it's for free, right? It's something that's available, publicly available. And then maybe there's some other types of content that are not quite free. It requires you to identify yourself or, something like that. So that's getting into products and services at that point. Once I'm in that middle of the funnel, I've tried out some of your products, I've tried out some of your services, that's really building value. And to the extent that you can convince me, right, that there's value there, I'm going to opt in, and you're probably going to be, more often than not, you're going to be successful when you ask me to convert. And so, Merritt, how do I nurture along with that? Like, those are like the steps in engagement, but how do you kind of keep the process going?
Oh, it's a give and take, right? I was reminded when Sarah asked us in a chat about having partners share their data too, right? It's not just asking and asking and asking and asking and asking. It's providing, right? It's like, I want you to do this. So why don't I give you this free webinar, or why don't I offer you this case study, whatever it might be. It's generally just a back and forth. It's like you said, building the value, building that relationship. It's a bit of a dance, you know what I mean? Just kind of getting people down the funnel by understanding what they're looking for, and, well, first of all, asking them what more they might want and how you can deliver on that. And so as you move them down that funnel, again, something I'm doing or trying to do most days, this is it's about listening as much as it's about providing and seeing where people are responding to your offering. So, I was talking before about all the content everyone here on this call offers at their association or might be able to, what resonates with who, and how will that move the needle for them, right? Are you talking to the right person? So that's a big part of it too, is the audience, but yeah.
All right, so this again could be another whole hour by itself, but Merritt, I want to talk about automation, right? Because like some of this is like, hey, this is a lot of work. Just really quickly, tell us about how you automate some of these tasks using a tool.
Yeah, so we use here at Association Analytics, we use a tool rather called Sales Loft. It's obviously a sales tool, but it helps to put people into kind of cadences that would resonate with them, kind of putting things, for lack of a better term, on rails to help me save time to then be able to spend that time better understanding the audiences, the things I'm doing, and providing content in kind of a, maybe not a drip, but in a kind of approaching people in a methodical way that doesn't burn them out, but also make sure you're kind of present before them.
Yeah.
And again, it's about using technology. Yeah, sorry, Bill. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, would you say, is it fair to say that essentially what so SalesLoft has this this concept of a cadence,
Mhm.
and a cadence is like a series of engagement, points of engagement that you go through with a prospect, kind of to try to move them down the funnel, and it's not unlike what Bree was talking about earlier, right? It's a journey map, right? So each one of those
Yeah.
things represents a point on the journey, and we're just getting some help to nurture, right, and kind of progress each one of those along. Is that fair to say?
100%. Yeah, it's like
Okay.
you said, it's about feeding people the right content when they need it, basically, and making sure that it's getting to them when I don't know, again, when the time is right, rather than just bombarding them, I
Yeah,
suppose.
and I think I don't think this is very common, but many of us, when we bought our marketing automation system, had something like this in mind, to be more proactive with how we're making contact with our prospects through the different stages, and it would be time well spent to revisit that, right, and see how you can automate some of those things. Okay, engage and nurture. Yeah, tell us about it, Matt. What are some of the methods? What are
So
some of the
it's the
methods?
ways that you can like just speak to. I mean, again, the value of being a member, right? It's through the newsletter, things you've achieved, emails to reach out to people. It's figuring out ways to get, rather than just being, what was the term you used during the poll? Kind of being just a loudspeaker, being much more direct about it, right? Just saying, getting in front of people over and over and over. Maybe not that, constantly, but delivering content to them that really resonates, right? Creating that kind of social proof, whether it is, this is the, look at this great event that we provide. Look at how these people have succeeded and grown their careers within our association. It's just having evidence and providing that evidence to prospective members so that they see themselves in that same seat, I suppose, right? It's about
Yeah.
understanding the people you already have and how you can replicate their journey again with somebody else. And then
So,
obviously tracking that stuff is important too, because if you don't know what you're doing, then you're kind of stuck.
yeah, so Bree, there was earlier on in the chat, there's a few of them that said, "Hey, I'm just a small staff, or it's just me, like all this stuff to me." So, what would you say to, maybe consider a fractional CMO would probably be a good suggestion, but aside from that, like what advice do you have for a small staff association, or I can't afford a really robust marketing automation system, and I'm essentially going to have to set all this up manually. Like, what would be some good advice on how to get started with that?
Yeah, so anything that you can do to create a personalized experience, even if it's with a segment of the individuals. If you're doing it all yourself, you can't, if you have 60,000 membership organization, you obviously can't reach out to all of them. Plus you have hopefully new leads coming into the door. I would say anything that you can do to identify like who actually needs to, who's giving you the indicators of being involved. Like, here's a good example on this webinar. The people who are involved in this chat are like invested in the conversation, right? So that's a good place to start, because those are your most engaged individuals who versus sending out just random bulk communications. I have a client that has a list of about 10,000 people, and they have a weekly e-newsletter, and we've kept it because it doesn't convert, but a ton of people open it. And I know open rates are questionable, but it does seem like there's some some transfer of information happening there. However, it's not a conversion tool. So you have to do other things if you want to actually convert. And any way that you can segment out and say, okay, I this group of people did this recently. Let's start with them and see what works. Then that's great. The other point I want to make is we've been talking a lot about the people who are already in somewhere like floating around in the funnel. It is unlikely that if you have lofty goals around whatever it is, membership, anything. If you have lofty goals around that and you say, okay, we want to increase membership by 15% this year, that it is not going to happen most likely by converting who's already floating around in your sales funnel. You have to get some more people in the mix and get some new people interested.
Great.
So that's been my experience over and over again, is just finding them. And then what we were talking about earlier is like, it may not be in that narrow segment of just traditional membership model. It might be something else and something new that needs to be created. You're just not going to know until you find out more about those individuals and get more of them in the mix.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. That was a great tip. In case we weren't as clear on that as we should have been earlier, you're probably not going to get to where you want to go just by converting the engaged non-members. However, you do have to track all of those, right? So that's actually a good segue to what we're going to say here. We talk a lot about engagement. Engagement involves like choosing activities and weighting those activities. But the cool thing about it is it's not just for members, it's for non-members as well. So if you have non-members that are engaging, you can see how they're engaging, and you can be deliberate about the way that you want to target them for conversions. Okay. So with that, we're going to jump right into the last section, which is we want to convert. And so this is our last look at the funnel. We talked about how to get more prospects in the funnel. We talked a little bit more about how to push them down the funnel, through different points of engagement and different communications along the way to prompt them, right, to kind of move on to the next step. And look at that fancy, right? So conversion is the name of the game, right? That's right. These green guys at the bottom that we want to convert. So along those lines, we talked about some of the ways that we're nurturing them, different kinds of communications and so forth. And Merritt said it before, right? Kind of do the things that work and don't do the things that don't work, right? So just a quick plug for a test and learn kind of approach. I don't know if anyone is actually doing A/B testing, but probably should, at least for some of these things. Test out different content, different subject lines, right? The button versus the link, all this sorts of things. Some of you are probably using AI to help generate your content. If you're doing that, then it makes things like this, multiple versions of the same things, a lot easier. Okay, so conversion analysis, right? So this is like the methods and metrics that speak to conversions. Most of these things are things that we're going to do in Google Analytics, right? In GA4, right? So we're going to set up events, and that's like the GA4 term for things where you're going to have a conversion, and they come with a bunch that are standard events. You can do custom events like downloads of a particular white paper or something like that. You can have landing pages, and of course, right, the membership application itself is maybe the end of the road, right, so to speak, for converting members. And there are all sorts of metrics. Most of these are, again, inside Google Analytics, right? So there's event conversions, the parameters of your events, the source, right? How did I even get to the website in the first place, right? Is it social media traffic that gets me conversions, or is it click-throughs on my emails, right? Or is it something else? Referral sites, whatever. Session data, like what do they do when they get to the site? This one's a little bit more difficult in my experience to really track, but the funnel stage, or kind of like what is their journey? Like, that they converted, but how do you piece together the journey that they took on your site in order to get that conversion, right? So that one, I don't know. Again, I'm putting you on the spot a couple of times now, but is there any advice that you have for measuring or tracking conversions, particularly if I'm not a data analyst, right? I'm not that technical, right? I don't. What are the important things here, right?
Yeah, I think it's just starting small. So I think with data, we get really overwhelmed with all of the things that are possible on what we could look at. And I think looking at the things that are right in front of you and that you have access to first are really good directional places to start. More specifically, if you have, it really depends on the organization, but I'm thinking of a couple different examples now with chapters. And if there's anything, if you have an organization that has chapters, like who's engaged there, looking at, how many people are in, like what they're doing in terms of content, and are they interested in bringing that back up to national? that's a consideration. And really just looking at like the data you already have to start with. I don't think that you need anything crazy. And then of course, if you want to put the Metapixel on, you know, your website, and if I would think most people probably already have that, but there are ways to just do simple data visualizations without you know, not needing to have a data analyst on your staff to do so.
All right. I know that that you have to, sorry about that. I know you have to get out of here. I want to just give you one last chance. If there's any pro tip or any key takeaway that you want to leave us with before you jump off.
Yeah, so just thinking ahead, once you do get your members, the new member lapse percentage is I think 13. Look up Amanda Kaiser's new member engagement study. The new member churn is 13% higher than for members who have been around for a while. So think ahead, because you know, it's harder to acquire them than it is to keep them. So you want to keep them. So keep that in mind when you're onboarding them and nurturing them throughout the year. The other thing is this is not like technical marketing advice, but I would suggest that to leave fear at the door and just try new things. And you know, there was a lot of talk about in the chat earlier in the conversation about generations and some generations don't join in traditional ways. Membership, whether it's a membership, whether it's a Netflix subscription, whatever it is, recurring revenue comes down to perception of value, period. So if you're delivering value and you're delivering it to the people who are there and you find more of them, you're going to see success. And so it probably doesn't look like it did 20 or 30 years ago, and it shouldn't, because so much has changed since then. So, you know, just I think being human, being as personal as possible is awesome, and making members feel welcome and valued upfront and giving the value upfront is so important, whether it's a piece of content, somebody contacting them directly, being greeted at the door if it's an in-person event. There are so many ways to do that and just naturally connect with people. And that's what converts, I think, at the end of the day.
All right. Great advice. Thank you so much. We'll let you go. Maybe we'll have you on again, but really appreciate all the insights. That was really helpful. So I want to add a couple things to that, you know, in terms of key takeaways. So we talked about being deliberate, right? Membership acquisition is a sales process. Treat it that way. Make someone accountable for it. Establish goals and track your performance to those goals. And to that point, right? You know, we talked about a percentage increase in your member acquisition, but you have to know how many members you're going to lose too, right? Calculate your retention. I mean, like, understand your churn. Like, you're going to lose a certain number of members. So if I want to improve by 10% or whatever, I have to add 10%, plus I have to cover the churn, right? So that's a topic maybe for another day. So come back next time. Navigating the member journey part 2, right? So we're going to talk about member engagement, like dive into it in depth and talk about scoring and all that kind of stuff. We're going to find out the best places to travel too. So you want to jump back for that. Thank you, Merritt.
Of course.
Happy
to be here.
It was great. Great job for your first time. I think it was at least 20% more fun.
We'll get there. I'm sure of it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you again on the next version. And if those of you that are looking for CAE credits and stuff, I think Katrina told you how to do that. So thanks again, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.